Back row minister of the world premier, Mr. Market coming at you live and direct. So we looked at um, some of my top 5 hip hop albums, really focusing from 80 to 89. Hit off a couple of good albums about that time. So let's take it from 89 on. 89 on. So I would have to say around that time, a lot of you had a lot of variety in hip hop. So you had De La Soul around that time coming out, Tribe Called Quest, dropping some new material around that time. Had a lot of different artists around that time. So let's take it. My top 5 starting in 1989. I have to start with an album that came out in 88 but really didn't get popular to 89, which Digital Underground's first album. And of course that's the album with the Humpty Dance. Tupac is on the video but not rapping at this time. He would rap on the same song, which came out around 88, 89 as well. But that album, the Sex Packets album, as far as top 5, is one of those albums that has a variety of different sounds to it. You hear the Oakland sound kind of going. Oakland always had a real, variety of MCs. You had Too Short. You had Digital Underground families. You had a lot of different various types of MCs coming out of Oakland. So he always got different sounds from Oakland. But Digital Underground was just another crew from Oakland that kind of gave hip hop a different sound, a different West Coast sound, when we really started to, get acclimated to the sounds of Oakland. E40 coming out the Bay, we started some Bay Area sound, stuff like that. But a Sex Package tape, definitely one of my top 5. At number 5, I'm going to put the Sex Package tape coming into 89. So, what is after that? What are some of my favorite tapes after that? And I always say tapes because this is the time of tapes. So we go on to 89, and I'm going to go out on a limb for number 4. Number 4 is kind of hard. It shouldn't be we say from 89 to 90. I'm trying to think of another good impactful tape from 89, but can't really find an impactful tape for 1989. Not a lot of impact. A lot of impactful songs from 1989, but not a lot of impactful full CDs from 1989. We had a lot of singles in 89. So of course I'll jump to 1990, and around that time hip hop is very, very mixed up around this time. Hip hop is, it's a lot of various artists, a lot of various sounds. We get a wide variety and mixture of different sounds about this time. So I'm going to say in 1989, 1990, one of my favorite albums and one of my number 4 album at that time has to be BDP's Entertainment album. A beautiful album, well put together. Far be it, in my opinion, one of their best pieces of work was that album, and that's coming in that period, 89, 90. Just a good piece of work. Just a good piece of work. Great production on the album, and by far one of BDP's best albums. I would say their best album of the time. Pretty much their best album that they made. It was just an all around great produced album, and the lyrics, the education on the album was strong, and I have to really give that album kudos for inside of that time period. Alright, so my number 3 album inside of this time period has to be, nonetheless, hands down, I'm gonna say Tribe Called Quest second album, and the Low End Theory, one of the best albums they made. Came at around that time, actually 91, the Low End Theory would drop, but a well put together album, well produced album. We were introduced with the Tribe with Bonita Applebum, Left My Wallet in El Segundo, and then we graduated to getting more and more into the various production styles of Ali Shaheed Muhammad and other producers, but a well put together album, and by far is my number 3 album. So we go Sex Packets, we go Boogie Down Production Entertainment album, and then going into the top 3, we got to give it to the Low End Theory. Have to give it to Low End Theory at number 3 for one of the best produced albums, most solid produced albums of that time. Solid produced. All right. So number 2, where are we at with number 2? So number 2, we go to the West Coast. We go to Dr. Dre's Chronic album. To have a variety of MCs and be able to do what they did in that album, by far, you know, one of the feats of that early time period. And we're talking about from 89. We go from 89 to around 92 with this one. Just the all-around accomplishment to be able to do that. All-around accomplishment to be able to put that type of album, that type of feel together. And, you know, just really tie in the production with various artists, with various styles, and still come out with a product that's by far one of the best produced products of the West Coast for that time. And in a long time when Dre put that Chronic album together, definitely a classic album is the Chronic album. So before we go to number 1, what are some of the honorable mentions around this time period? Like I say, when you go into, you know, 89, 90, early 90s, you know, I had a lot of singles, but not a lot of strong albums, in my opinion. Wasn't a lot of strong albums, but a lot of singles. So one of my favorite albums around that time is AMG's first album, which, you know, had a lot of different styles in it. I thought it was a well-produced album. I enjoyed AMG's album. A lot of people didn't enjoy the content, especially with his first release, Bitch Better Have My Money, but I enjoyed the album. I think the album was a good, strong, solid album by AMG. Didn't really back it up with much of anything, but it was a good album nonetheless. Another album for me that was a good album around that time was Ed O.G. and the Bulldogs album. It was his first album. It was a great album, well produced. Second album kind of fell off, but the first album, in my opinion, was a strong album, well produced album. I enjoyed the album a great deal. I remember that one I had Be a Father to Your Child on there. I Got the Habit was on there. Let Me Take Your Fancy. A lot of good songs on that album. So really a complete album at the time. Please Heaven Don't Hurt 'Em is a honorable mention, but it's one of those albums, like I said, Hammer got real commercial around this time, so some of the production wasn't as strong, but changed hip-hop forever with the Please Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em. Showed the marketing power of hip-hop, showed that you could put it together and you can get somebody to back you. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of giving away your music, letting other people control your catalogs. I'm definitely not a fan of that, because it's your music. You know, these labels, they get a hold of these catalogs and they can pimp these catalogs for years after the artist has died. So I'm not a fan of giving away your music. No, you do a deal with me, I keep my catalog. You just, you know, help me back and, you know, get the material out there, and we split up the funds that way. But you're not getting my music. I don't understand how people do it. It's stupid to me. But Please Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em, one of the better albums of the time as far as showing the marketing ability for hip-hop at that time. NWA Niggas for Life, of course, that time NWA had already exploded with the second album. After Dre left, after Cube left, they didn't really think NWA would be able to really eclipse what they did the first time, and they eclipsed it with that second album. A lot of good songs on that second album, but you know, I still didn't have the feel that Cube kind of brought. So aside that time period, it still didn't have the feel. Another honorable mention for that time was Ice-T's. This is Ice-T's third album, which is Original Gangster. Very well produced album. Could have by far been in the top 3 for one of the most well-produced albums of the time. I really enjoyed that album, and it's a great produced album. Various styles of Ice-T, various lyrical content. Lyrical content is brutal for a good album. So, what's my #1 album of this time period? I'm talking about like 89. I should have introduced about 89 to 92 is where I want to stick with this. And I have to say that by far the #1 album in that time period was Ice Cube's first album. And you can honorable mention the first and the second, but I'm gonna say the first album by far was just America's Most Wanted. Just pretty much showed the ability of Ice Cube, showed his ability to step away from the group, his ability to be a solo artist, his ability to be able to keep an album together by himself. He didn't need everybody else. And his ability to go out and find the production he wanted. Remember now, the Shockley brothers produced this album out of New York. So a West Coast guy going to people he admired his whole career to get the album he wanted. And by far one of the best albums of that period, that early 90s period, was Ice Cube's America's Most Wanted. Just a well-produced album, and really showed that Cube could handle it by himself. So these are my 5 honorable mentions for the 89 to 92 period. And I'll do a 92 to 2000 period. I just put 92 to 2000 all in that length. And we'll come up with a top 5 for that later on down the road. But we'll freeze and talk about some different other things. But just want to talk about hip-hop culture and, you know, just some of the variations in hip-hop. And from my opinion, a lot of things that took place. And, you know, packaging what makes a great album. And I think, you know, for those time periods, those albums these are historic albums. These are classic albums that, you know, a lot of people just need to go back and listen to see the production, the lyrics, how everything's put together, and why and what makes them classic albums inside of these periods. But it's the Moxie Background Ministry. Peace and hand grease.